Hey everybody, On the Road with Beards and Dunn is back for the Olympic episode, but we don't have the beards if you haven't already noticed that. Dick, I hate to report this, is in Fargo Hospital getting his knee. He's having a surgery again today. I know if any of you have been listening over the last few months, Dick's had an issue with his knee. He's had his knees replaced and he's got a bad infection. He's got MRSA, which is like the worst kind of bacterial infection you can get because it's resistant to most all kinds of antibiotics. So he's had a couple surgeries and they keep having to go back in and try to correct this issue. And he's there today. He regrets not being here. And, we were going to talk Olympics. And so he said, well, find somebody else to talk Olympics about. And it didn't take me about 1 second. And I said, well, how about Brad Cordts? And Dick goes, perfect, perfect. Because we both know what a track and field fan, and you're going to hear about that in a minute here, that Brad Cordts is. And just to bring you up to speed, if a lot of you that have any South Dakota State relationships all know Brad. But for those of you that might not know this, Brad's South Dakotan. He was born and raised there, I believe, in Madison, South Dakota. And I'm going to let Brad fill this in. He's got cred. To fill Dick Beardsley's shoes, we had to get somebody with credibility, somebody that could walk the talk. And I think we found the right guy here. And so, Brad, I'm so excited. I met Brad in 1982. I was in graduate school at South Dakota State, and Brad was there as an undergraduate. And we met, and I have to admit, we didn't, become bosom buddies or anything like that. I was married and had a child and had lots of different focuses going on and training like crazy with the SDSU guys. And so I knew Brad, and then it was kind of fun to see his career go on. And I kind of, kept following through the years. But Brad, tell me a little bit about yourself. Madison, South Dakota. What started it all off there for you with running?
Yep. So my dad was moved there from Howard. He's actually in the Hall of Fame for both track and basketball. He was a basketball coach first at Howard, undefeated team in 1964. I was born a couple months after they won the undefeated state championship in '84. He moved to Madison as the ostensibly to be the head basketball coach, and he did that for several years. But he also coached several other sports, including track. And he was assistant in track. And so in the 70s, he was really exposed to some great runners. Jeff Schemmel is a number one on our list at Madison. He's adjusted 1600 time around 410, 412 was his mile.
Everybody knew Jeff Schemmel. Yeah.
Yes. And so ended up running sub 4 at Kansas State.
Yeah.
And then Larry Beardsley followed him to Kansas State, actually, and he was very, very fast.
All-American.
And then we also had a SDSU alum, Jeff Herman,
yep.
and was outstanding. He was third on our list. And then Bruce Keppen, who also ran at South Dakota State, was fourth on the list. And my dad, actually, Bruce Keppen was the first varsity athlete. My dad was assistant for the other guys, but his first head coaching job was when Bruce was a senior in '76. And sort of how he got me running, I used to want to high jump and run the 100 and some other things, but I would always ask, hey, who is this guy Bruce Keppen with all these ladies he's got? And he goes, well, he runs the mile. You can't do that. So he kind of got me into it by reverse psychology, if you will. He was not a coach that pushed you. He let you come to the sport. He would be great advice. He's actually a great dad and a wonderful master coach, actually. And so I came to the mile and ended up being just behind Bruce by about a second or so on the list. I was fifth on the list for several years. Heath Yankee knocked me off.
How fast
I
were you?
I ran 4:23 for 1600,
Okay.
and then Heath Yankee knocked me off that list, but I went down to 6. Heath ended up winning he went to North Dakota State, the other university, and was the national champion at 800 for the Bison in the Division II before they switched to Division I. So I was probably better in the 800. So Keppen was 1 on the list, and I was 2 on the list in the 800. Keppen was 156 and 0.8 hand timed 880 yards, and then I ran 156.88 fully automatic meters for 800, which I actually one time wrote a long letter to Track and Field News to try to pitch that might be an equivalent time because of the 880 rounding down, and then the fully automatic versus the hand time. But Track and Field told me I'm still about 0.3 short. So I'll have to
Okay.
accept I'll accept my space on the list. And then just kind of the street cred for my family. My brother took over the head cross country coach for several years. He's been coach of the year for both men and women. He's had a championship cross country team and a girls runner up team and a 2-time girls state champion that he coached there at Madison. And he also coaches the distance runners. And he actually has a state champion 800 runner, um, Justin Schreppel, who basically tied my time, or basically shared the number 2 spot on the list with 156.8. So anyway, we've got a big family. My dad is in the Hall of Fame, as I said. I'll even say when he was on his deathbed, my brother asked him what was his favorite sport, and my dad just announced, track and field. So that
Nice.
was settled for us in the family there.
It's in the
But
blood. I
yes,
guess.
sir. And so then I went to SDSU in '82, as you said, and I took your marathon training class where you
I
brought
did.
Dick Beardsley in, and I still have my signed Boston uh, um, uh, poster with Dick Beardsley on there.
That is
And
cool.
the one thing you imparted to me that I kept up with all the years of my running is keeping a running log, and I have amazing running logs with details of times and places and training and how I felt, how much I weighed. It's a little scary, but I did keep that up all those years. So that's my background. I ran. I was okay at South Dakota State. Unfortunately, Rod. I followed Rod, which was good and bad. I chased him all around in high school. When he was a sophomore and I was a senior, I was fourth and Rod was third to one of our teammates, Todd Stevens from Stevens,
Right.
won the mile, and his teammate was second. And Rod and I, after leading most of the race, ended up third and fourth. And Rod beat me by about a few tenths of a second in the mile, 422 point, and I was 423 flat. And then, of course, 2 years later, Rod shows up on our doorstep at South Dakota State, and the rest is history. Chasing, and his feature race was my race, was the 1500 meters. So and then
It-
just a quick, I was just sort of cannon fodder at South Dakota State, running behind Rod all those years, and I placed in conference indoor, and I always made the final in the 1500. Was seventh outdoor my senior year. Rod won, of course, both those races. But the one gift Rod gave me is I wore it today, my Howard Wood
I love it.
Rod told me on my 22nd birthday for my birthday present, he was going to just run the 5,000. And he said, you got the 1,500 all yourself and you better win it as your senior year present. And I did, like you, I won the 1,500 at Howard Wood in a sort of a miracle run, but which was my PR at the time. And it was a great race, but that's enough about me. I definitely love running. I ran for many years. I ran 30 marathons after that. I ran 19 consecutive Bostons from 96 through 2014,
Wow.
including the year they tried to blow us up there. So I did a lot of marathon, and how I ran the marathon, I have no idea. I just kind of, as I got older, I said, I can't run these short races anymore. I'm just going to, for fun, go into the marathon. And I wasn't very great. I mean, I ran 243 at Boston. I got 228th place there in 2000 when I was 35. So that was my peak, but nothing's, world beating, but for around here, I was club level. Okay.
Middle distance guy, I think the 800 and 1500 are such unique events. The long, they call the 400 the longest sprint, I guess. I think the
Mm,
800's not much shorter than a long sprint, but your muscle fiber type, they're getting more scientific in this all the time. You weren't really designed to be a marathoner. You're a middle
yeah.
distance guy. I mean, the milers are a perfect match of that 50% fast twitch, 50% slow twitch. And it's really hard to find that unique combination that you've got the leg speed but also the endurance to go the distance. And so commendable, you jumped into the marathon, which is just kind of, it's a lifestyle. And I think that's awesome. Now, this is why I really thought of you when we talked Olympics. Remind me, I know you've gone to some Olympic trials. How many Olympic trials have you personally attended?
I've gone to 10. My buddy and teammate Todd Sheldon ran at Lincoln and then ran at South Dakota State, and he was
Yeah.
sort of my mentor at South Dakota State. He was 2 years older. He and I have gone to 10. My wife has gone to 9 trials, and his wife has gone to 8 of the trials. So we started in '88 when Rod made the 1500, and sort of a big giant group, the Fendrick boys and Todd and I and a bunch of group went in '88, and then every year after that we went to New Orleans in '92 with Todd and Greg Fendrick and my wife, which that's another whole story of us all sharing a giant hotel room in New Orleans. I can't get away with that anymore, but yeah. And then in '96 we all went to Atlanta, and then in 2000 it was in Sacramento. Again in 2004 Sacramento. Then they moved to Eugene in '08, and then it's been there every 4 years from '08 till current, and that's how we got the 10. So yeah, I hope to get to everyone until the end of me, as they say, because it's a pretty special week. 10 days, and
that
then
is amazing.
yeah. So I love the trials. I've been to 3 Olympics and 2 World Championships. So
Yeah,
I've been
that was
to
my next
L.A.,
question.
Atlanta, Sydney for the Olympics, and Paris and Osaka for the Worlds. So that was in '03 and '07. And of course, LA is '84, '96 for Atlanta, and 2000 Sydney. And then Sydney was special because post collegiate, I probably, without bragging, maybe I would brag a little, I probably was the number one chasing Rod around to watch his sort of world class coming out parties. I had the means and time off to travel a little bit, and I went to see him run everywhere that I could. And he rewarded me with putting me and my wife on the friends and family entourage to go to Sydney. So
Wow.
we had credentials to go into the New Balance shows and or their club level stuff, and then we got to go into the Friends and Family Center at the AT&T Center. So you got the badges and stuff to hang out with Rod and his and at that time his wife, but it was fantastic. The Sydney thing was just amazing. Rod didn't have a great day,
Yeah.
but it was because he was sick.
Right.
Interestingly, on that trip, Steve Kurtenbach, is a very famous Brookings guy, of course, he ran a little bit of track for us, and then Scott Underwood was there, and I basically got a taxi driver, bargained with a taxi driver to drive us around to all the spots in the marathon for like $200 Australian. Undy kept calling it $200 Canadian, but I go Undy, it's Australian. But anyway, so we got to like 7 or 8 spots. This guy was like violating all kinds of riding all over the place. But for $200, the guy
Willing.
he was ours for the day. But
That's an
yeah, so
awesome story.
yeah, I have had and I've had this. I'm kind of Where's Waldo when it comes to running because I went to law school at Oregon to Eugene. And so, my dad, I got into USD and some other places, and my dad goes, "Why are you going to Oregon to law school?" He goes, "You're not going there to think you're a runner, are you?" And I go, "Well, maybe." And so I actually ran. It was almost like fantasy camp. I was a post collegiate, but I asked Coach Dellinger, and I had met Mark McMonagle, who was the second in NCAAs in '86 for the Ducks in the 10,000,
Mhm.
and he's a Minnesota kid from up in the Twin Cities area, and he introduced me to Coach Dellinger, and I just said, "Hey, I'm a post collegiate guy. Can I just tag along? I know how to stay out of people's way. I just want to run 1,500 workouts and the fall cross country workouts." And he said, "Sure, no problem. You're registered in school. Don't worry about it." So I just kind of tagged along, and it was fantastic. I mean, I'm running with Dub Myers and all these great runners, and I'm just like at fantasy camp every day. And I ended up running my best time as a post collegiate in '88, 2 years after college. So,
Yeah.
and my claim to fame, I ran tons and tons of races with, I mean, Mike Boyd. I mean, there's people that came and I would be in these races. And in the old days, you didn't have cell phones, you didn't have computer. To find out if you got into a race on these open races, you just have to sit on Friday night by the phone and wait, old dial up phone, and they'd call you. And the secretary from the track would or it'd be one of the side coaches.
Mhm.
"You're in." That's all they'd say is this Cordts? Yes, you're in. And then they'd hang up. So you'd find out if you're in the race, and they'd be calling the 12 people in that race. It was crazy. And
Did you ever
so
get the call and go, "Sorry, you're not in"?
I did once, and
Oh,
I think it was, but it was, but I got into a different race. I got into like an 800 instead, so I
okay.
took that, so it was fine.
I
There
mean,
was no
that'd
room
be
in the
mind
inn.
bending to be rested, prepped, mentally getting yourself together, and sit there and go. If they call and say no, it's like what a pop up.
No, it was kind of screwy because the year before or the in '88 I had run so I got into the B heat. So they had 2 heats of the 1500. So they had a and a B heat, and then they had an open mile at the Twilight meet, which is a big meet in Oregon and for the college, and have open runners. And so they had 3 big races, and there's there's 7,000-8,000 people that come to these meets. And I had the fortunate luck, I think, to win the B heat of the 1500 at the Twilight meet against a bunch of ducks that were resting before, at that time, Pac 10s. They're
Okay.
the 5 and 10 guys that didn't want to run a 5 and 10 a week before Pac 10s. And they slept on me. They were all kind of looking at each other running 64s, and I ran a sub 60 last lap and won by, just got my bicycle, pedals on the a little bit ahead of them, and they were chasing me down pretty hard the last 100, but I ended up winning, and I got my name on the board. They spelled my name wrong. Instead of Cordts, Cordts, they spelled it Courts, which is pronounced correctly, but
Okay.
I'll still take it. I
Yeah.
think Brian Fendrick made a picture of it. I have it somewhere in
Well,
my.
that reminds me, Eugene was Brian Fendrick was out there in grad school, I believe.
Yep.
Was Rod also Dehaven out there training?
So he came out in the summer of '86 with us. Brian and I road tripped out with 2 cars and some Ranger Rick Mike, walkie talkies back and forth, and we traveled all the way to no cell phones.
I love it.
We traveled all the way to Eugene, and we Kurt Bacon, who was a famous runner from
I know
NDSU,
Kurt. Sure.
he was a grad student there, and we stayed on his floor for like 2 weeks, which his wife was really happy about, I'm sure. Smelly runner guys, because all we did is run all summer. And that was the dream. So Rod trained there all summer. We got little jobs. We were dead broke. I mean, we had no money. We lived in a crappy apartment eventually, but it was so much fun. We lived in an apartment right across the street from Hayward Field. And so,
Did you publish a newsletter or something?
yes,
What was that called?
yes. So Newsletter West. And
Yes.
so just to stay in touch with everyone, I made up the name, and it was just ridiculous. It was almost like Babylon Bee meets Sports Illustrated. And so the whole idea was I did meet Kenny Moore, believe it or not, who wrote for
Wow.
Sports Illustrated.
Yeah.
He lived in Eugene, and I've met him a couple times, and most recently, before he passed away just a few years ago. I met him at the trials. I've got this wonderful picture of me and Kenny, arm in arm, and he was so generous and nice with his time and just talking. I told him I kind of like to write, and he was my hero, and et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, I fancied myself Kenny Moore at the keyboard, and I made this newsletter up on my own, typed it on a typewriter, mimeographed with cutouts from newspaper clippings, and we threw this thing together. Um, Interestingly enough, Bob Bartling, I mailed them to Bob, right?
Right.
Bob, last year at the Massman Palooza, we call it, the Jackrabbit reunion at his farm, Bob had brought the entire catalog. It was all bound. My entire, every issue I ever printed and sent off in the mail was bound in actually, machine bound, and it's actually at the Briggs Library in his collection.
Well, my claim to fame is you asked you. I was in it once. I had an interview, and you sent me a list of questions, and I could just answer in
Yeah.
writing, because, like you said, no cell phones, no computers, no email,
No.
and I still have that thing in my scrapbook because it was like, that's kind of your dream, is to ever get enough that somebody even wants to hear your story, let alone publish it, sort of thing. And so I remember that distinctly. I was like, one of my Dennis Barker did one called Fitsport out of the Minneapolis area, and I was able to get on that one time. And so, hey, you're in good company. I just was, yeah, I think what I'm trying to get to people that are listening to this is, Brad, you bleed blue and gold SDSU in your blood, and your love for track and field and running has no bounds. Dick and I think we're real, we're Raha fans, but trust me, we haven't done a smidgen of some of the things that you've done as far as being a promoter and being a supporter of running. And Rod Dehaven, your relationship with him, I didn't know Rod that well. He was 10 years younger than I am, but what a dream for a kid from South Dakota. In high school, I was known as the running nut. And I remember in my yearbook, somebody said, Mike, when you make the Olympics, we'll come and watch it, or something like that. And, in the back of your mind, you're going, these people don't have a clue what it would take to go to the Olympics. That's off the chart. The top 3 in the country.
Right. Right.
If you're in the top 3 of any sport in the United States, you're in some pretty heady company there. And so when we, to watch Rod's career go along and to see him attain that goal was just, it gives me chills to this day. And which kind of brings us, let's bring this around, the Olympics. You're probably, I should just turn you loose. I had an idea that we just kind of run through. I'm going to throw some events at you. I don't know.
Sure.
We haven't rehearsed this. I don't know if you're the 100 meters.
Mm-hmm.
What's your, I'm just going to throw, Noah Lyles. My opinion was he's a better 200-meter guy. I didn't think he was an outside shot at best for a gold. I thought he'd probably medal. The fact he won the Galdar race is like, wow, awesome. He's going to double.
Yeah.
And, then he would come to the 200. And I've been hearing a lot of negative things about him as far as his attitude, brashness, cockiness. He's a sprinter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Excuse me. And I'm not going to try to say anything culturally because I'll probably get called something. But, that's not unusual for people to, it's a gamemanship. And so it doesn't bother me. I don't care about that.
He put his money where his mouth is. That's the one. And he got sick. He's got COVID, which if anyone's had COVID, you feel like terrible. And he still got a bronze medal. So yeah,
what an effort.
So interesting that, and a quick segue, since I've been to so many crazy races and just memories of the first great 100 I ever saw was Carl Lewis in '84, and my brother and I were on the front. We were in front of Carl Lewis's parents at the race. So when he won, I don't know if you see the iconic moment when he got the giant flag, and he came running around at the 100, and my brother and I. We're fuzzy, but we're on the cover of Track and Field News in that picture, and
check that out.
And I can tell because my brother's got his Bruce Springsteen 1984 Born in the USA T-shirt on from the concert we'd just seen in Minneapolis. But yeah, so Carl Lewis was from me to right across. I could have touched him, which I didn't, but so that the 100. I like all the races. I'm a track nut. I went to every decathlon event, in the mornings. No one's there. Yeah. There's 200 people in the stands watching the 110 hurdles because they're going to run for 13 seconds. And then there's going to be an hour delay. You're going to wander around while they rest for the next event, or hour and a half sometimes. So I'm a track nut. I say to people, I just love doing it. So I like all the events. 100 is great. Noah Lyles is a fantastic athlete. He'll be around, I think, for a while.
How about the women? Shakira Richardson, everybody had her as kind of the odds-on favorite. There was some discrepancy about her getting to the race.
I'd heard about that. They wouldn't let them in. They had private conveyance to the meet, and they kind of got delayed on the security getting in. Apparently, so they said she didn't really bring that up herself. Other people did, which I kind of appreciate that she didn't make any excuses.
Yep.
I think her deal, honestly, if you think about her, she's kind of controversial. Some people really disliked her 4 years ago because she got a little over the top. And then, she smoked some weed before the race, and then she blew her Olympics. And sad, right? So, but the thing is what a great redemption story, because 4 years later, here she is. A lot of people in 4 years is 4 lifetimes in a sprinter's life, and especially when you blew, and your sponsor could have left you. Nike stayed with her. They gave her, even doubled down on her, and she did a couple things. I think she modulated slightly. She's still cocky and brash, but she modulated it just a little bit, and sort of self-deprecating in a way when she did her ads and things to make herself a little bit, funny. She's got that one where she's got her grandma and her mom, and she goes, well, I'm not going to listen to you guys anymore, et cetera, and a generational thing. And she goes, I'm just kidding. Anyway.
She anchored the 4x100 and
absolutely
won the gold. I mean, she was definitely behind going into that anchor leg, and she closed it out. Let's jump to the 400. I don't know about you, but, when they were coming around that last corner, I was like, shaking my head, thinking, where are the Americans? Because they weren't anywhere to be seen. In the camera view, you don't even see Quincy Hall. You don't even see him. And they're heading into the last 100 meters, 90 meters, 80 meters. Right. And all at once, the announcer saw, and he goes, well, here comes Hall. And the guy, you see high school kids sometimes when they're overextending, that's what he reminded me of. He's like the high school kid that didn't know any better. And it was like, I'm going to either die or win this race sort of thing.
Absolutely.
I thought he'd fall apart because, he was just straining. Yeah. And yet he didn't. He held it together. unbelievable. I don't know.
It really was, and we're so used to, I think, in U.S. seeing dominance in the 400s, and we're so used to seeing the great ones, really just tear that event
Yeah.
up. But you know what, he hung in there and really poured it on and never gave up, and it was a great event.
Great one to watch. The 800 is running today. It's going to be an awesome race. I can't wait to see it. Let's talk about the women. I usually only kind of focus on the Americans, because that's
Sure,
because that's just
that's
the
our
way
audience here,
our
right?
culture
Sure.
is. We only care about ourselves. But this Keely Hodgkinson, if I'm saying that right,
Yep. Yep.
ton of
Sure.
pressure. I mean, when
Sure.
our gal went out, the defending champion, fell out at the trials and it isn't there. Well, they're basically like, well, we might as well just hand her the medal now, which is like the worst position I think to find yourself in. And she rose to the occasion, ran
Sure.
a great race. Any
She
thoughts?
stayed. Yep, she absolutely ran steady, smart, stayed out of trouble. And a thing Mew, when she went down, and
Mm.
Eugene, a lot of people felt bad, but honestly, she was in not as great shape. She'd been injured,
Way under
and
raced.
her
Yeah.
I saw that race, and I saw it with my own eyes. And one of the things she did, which is a no, and she's got very long strides. She's used to being out front, and she knew the girl went out really hard to take the lead, and she wasn't going to get the lead. There's no way. And so what she did was she tried to cut over too fast. She clipped the other girl. And so everyone says, oh, she got tripped. And she actually tripped herself by running into the back of the leg
Yeah.
of the other girl. She basically wiped out three girls. So it was really sad. I felt bad for her, but she wasn't really ready to race. I don't think she would have gotten in the top three that day
I think she had one
for
race
the
prior
U.S.
to the trials.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
it's because of the injuries or whatever.
yeah, she'd been hurt. Yeah, no, Hodgson was outstanding, and I really appreciated that her run,
Yeah.
definitely.
1,500 men's. I mean,
Yeah,
we could go on and on a whole episode just on that event. The rivalry
no,
between Ingebrigtsen and Kerr. I think it's good for track and field. Ovette and Co.
oh
They
yeah,
never. It just brought
100%.
attention to the sport, and everybody's got their opinion. Everybody's got their guy. Um, and
So
it
let
was
me throw
almost
this at
like you couldn't write the script. Everybody was like, these two guys are the men, and the rest of you guys just do the best you can.
let me let me throw an interesting segue, because I'm going to get to my duck. Cole Hawker, of course, he's a duck. So the only thing I is close to my love of jackrabbits is love of ducks, because I went to school there for 3 years and watched them run and ran with them. But um, the funny thing, I'll segue this, is that Ovette is a great point you bring up. They just were so focused on each other all the time. And in '80, when Coe and Ovette had that great battle, Ovette upsets Coe in the 800 and wins. And then Coe comes back, and he wasn't supposed to be the stronger 1500 runner, and he just runs a marvelous 1500. And amazingly, there's two guys that were not at that race because of the Olympic boycott, which I know you were qualified for the trials in
Right.
'80 in the marathon, and Steve Scott in the mile, or 1500 rather, and Don Page in the 8. And that was one of the craziest trivia questions. Is in 1980, Ovette wins the gold. Coe had the fastest time, but who was ranked number one in the world at 800? It was Don Page. He
Wow.
beat both those guys after the Olympics, and and that was his year. By '84, he was sort of out the back door. He's too
A
old, I
great
suppose.
Villanova runner. I mean,
Absolutely,
yeah.
and so strong, and such a great runner. But I'm thinking that had Scott been there, and those two guys were so focused on each other, and that's Ingebrigtsen and Kerr, they just forgot about Cole Hawker. And I said to people, you guys are forgetting Cole Hawker. I watched that trials, that finish. He has a jet, and Jeff Massman, who ran with me at State, he had a great quote. He goes, nobody double surges at the end of a 1500. And he surged in,
Got cut off.
and Egbertson starts moving out. He starts moving Kerr out, which you try to do when you can keep that inner side lane clear.
Right.
And you never want to open that lane. And he cut him off once, and then he moved him out again, trying to keep Kerr. And Hawker did something I've never seen. It was like he ran a jetpack off of himself.
What's the dragsters used to have nitro or something? They'd flip a switch.
Nitro, yeah, exactly, like Mad Max when he hits the nitro when he's trying to get away from the bad guys that second time.
Well, because
And
they talked about his speed.
unbelievable.
at the trials and all that, and there was some analysis done, and they said on a world class level, timing last 100 meters,
Yeah.
Hocker had the record, like all
Yeah.
time. Like nobody's finished as fast. A
No.
53.3 last 400 with that
Yeah.
finishing, I don't know, 80 meters, 50 meters, when he really closed it out. Just unreal.
Track and Field News would probably break that down. I know,
Yeah.
because I know his last 200 was 26.1 or something like
Well, they
that.
showed
Crazy.
his I saw 4 100-meter splits, and I wish I had it written down. It was like 13.7, 13.4, 13.4, 13.3. I mean, it was like the dude, every 100 meters just a tick faster, but they were all moving, so it didn't really show. Usually, as you know, it's not the guy who's speeding up at the end; it's the guy who's slowing down the slowest at the end of a race. It looks like I just loved Dave Waddle 800 meters at Munich. His splits were like 26, 26, 26, 26. And, I remember watching that race and being embarrassed because he was like 10 meters off the back after 200 meters. I'm thinking the American guy is just embarrassing himself and us. And then, he got back to the pack at least with a quarter to go. Gee, he's in the middle of the group. And now he's kicking it. No, he didn't kick everybody down. Everybody else was dying and came back to him.
Yep.
And to have that strength, and I know Hawker talks about his 5K strength that's given him that ability to use the speed when everybody else can't use the speed. And then the Goose, I don't know if a lot of people give him he was 100th of a second from Kerr.
Oh, I know.
100th of a second. Kerr kind of was like, I moved up from bronze to silver. Dude, if that race was another meter long, you'd have had 2 bronzes in your war chest or whatever you want to call it. And, we would have been celebrating a 1-2. And so Kerr kind of got away with one because Goose was, it was a 100th of a second. I can't even imagine.
And the nice thing is none of those guys are going anywhere. Naguz is fantastic. And I think this will give him a lot of confidence. And to get 2 medals like that, not since like 1912 have we had 2 medals.
23 maybe?
23, yep.
And Naguz
so he'll be only
25? I don't know.
Yeah, and they both, Coe was 28 when he won his second gold. So I'm looking for Hawker in LA to repeat the Coe double.
Well, and Ingebrigtsen's not a old guy, and Kerr says already he's looking forward to 28. He's already he's I guess he's got the bronze and silver. He's like, I'm not done yet. If he might have won the gold, he might be talking retirement and stuff like that. But
yeah.
All right, moving along, and we're going to save the 10,000 in the marathon to the last because those are kind of my favorite. But the 3,000 meter steeplechase, Brad, I don't know about you. I just have to tell you my experience. I turned it on, and I'm thinking the U.S. sucks at this event. Usually, George. Oh gosh,
the women have been great. The women have been great.
Yeah, the women. Oh my gosh, I can't think of her name. Colburn.
Yeah.
I mean, she's off the charts, and I have to admit, I've been watching a lot of. Who's the gal from Idaho that's got a podcast or a YouTube channel? Ali Olander.
Olander,
yeah, and she was 7th at the trials. Didn't just trying to make the Olympic team, and so I kind of been watching the women's steeplechase, like you said. It's kind of been exciting, but the men, it just the Ethiopians, the Africans tend to dominate it. The Moroccans. There's been a Frenchman up there the last few world championships. And so, watching the race develop, and he's in last place, and you're kind of going, well, I hope he, finishes. It's kind of like the Tour de France. If I was a biker, sometimes you just want to finish in the group. You just want to be respectable. Say, hey, nice job. You hung in there. You did a good job. You weren't in the mix. You weren't in at the kill. But when that guy took the lead going into the last lap and down the backstretch, I was on my feet and I had tears coming out of my eyes because I was so emotional. I mean, it was just like, this is the American dream. This is everybody's Walter Mitty moment. When you're at the Olympic stage, you're an underdog. His 8:15 PR. I don't know what that rated him going into the race.
Not much.
No, leading down around the last water jump, and then we know he got beat by the defending world champion, Olympic champion, and held off the Kenyan, I believe it was, for the silver. Steeplechase. Do you ever run one?
I have not. Coach Underwood tried, because I played basketball at Madison. I'm pretty tall. I'm 6'1.25". I had some good hops in high school, And Undy tried to get me to do it, and I weighed 143 pounds in college. I go, I'm not running over those
You're
barriers.
smart,
It's not happening.
smart
And
man.
I have tiny ankles. I used to, I don't anymore, but I had tiny ankles, and I did break my ankle in cross country my sophomore year. I stepped in a hole or a rut at St. John's, so I had an avulsion fracture. So I have tiny track people
Well,
ankles. I'm not a
it's brutal. I ran one. I'm going to brag. I was 9:52. I ran it at a twilight
well.
meet
That's
at
good.
Brookings my
That's
senior
good.
year because it's the only season I ever had that I was healthy, and I ran a 1500 against Kurt Bacon. I ran like a 406, and Kurt beat me down the home stretch. And then like a week later, there was a twilight meet, and I ran. Andy, I want to run the steeple. Okay. And I wore, road racing shoes, Jayhawks. I think they were Tiger Jayhawks or something like that for some strange reason. Your shoes get wet. That feels like crap. And yeah,
Yeah.
towards it's about 2 miles. It's 7.5 laps. It's 3,000 meters, the metric 2 mile equivalent. And you know, it is a brutal because as you're fatiguing, those barriers are solid. There's no knocking them over. Anyway, long story short, this kid ran a 9-second PR at the Olympic Games. I mean, if you're going to bring your A game and uncork one,
Yep.
I got to give, I don't know who, Ed Eyestone, I guess, is his coach,
He
peaking
is.
these guys, bringing them to that point. That's an art that earns coaches they're a good reputation. He came that a whisper. They were all 806 and
Mm-hmm.
tenths. I mean, and so
Mm-hmm.
when you come right down to it, it's you're splitting hairs. But those three guys at the end, what a race!
That was a fantastic race. Rooks, he really delivered. That was an unexpected medal for the U.S.
Well,
for
I wonder,
sure.
and he's young. He was NCAA champ, I guess, last year, and he's can't be what 22, 23 years old
Hmm.
if he just getting out of
Yeah,
college. Of course,
and
he's
one of the funny things is those guys had trouble even having the Olympic time to get into the meet.
mm,
And one of the guys, and I can't, it wasn't Rooks, it was the other guy it's in the stable of Ed Eyestone there. Right after the trials, the rule was by midnight after the last day of the trials, you had to have the Olympic qualifying time, or you couldn't chase a time anymore. They used to let these guys chase to the last minute.
right.
So he flew from Eugene to Pennsylvania and ran at Penn. He ran a special steeple they had set up for him, and he got the Olympic time.
It's
And that was the other guy that did pretty well in there.
this.
And I'm like, this guy's serious.
He's
That's
he's Olympic
that you
standard.
just got top three at the trials, and you're going to go 3 days later, fly across the country, and have a setup race, and then have a PR by like several
Well, I mean,
seconds.
what a pressure cooker! I mean, you're on the
Yeah.
team if you
Yeah.
can run this time somewhere.
And the good news, it was a friendly. I would say it was a friendly group because the mission was
To get
nobody cared who won. It was the mission to get you through, and they did a perfect pacing job for him. But
that's
you still,
that's cool.
you,
I mean, that's
yeah,
it's coming together to help somebody out. 5,000 meters today. Can't wait. In fact, we need to wrap this up pretty soon because I don't want to miss any of this. 10,000. The very first. I don't know if that was the first track event, first final. I think it
yeah,
was, and
yeah,
traditionally, again, Americans, other than, Billy Mills, won the
yep,
gold back in
yep,
'64. I mean, the South
sure,
Dakota off of Pine Ridge, right wherever he was from, and that's just a great story all in itself. And then there was basically, you tell me, Rupp, 12 years
yeah,
ago
Rupp
was
was
the
probably the
silver
next best
medalist,
guy.
and
Mm-hmm.
not going to taint that, but he and Mo from Great Britain, they were training partners under Salazar, and
Sure,
still some people want to, sour grapes, whatever. It's in the past, move on. But the U.S. has not really ever had that, other than Rupp was a contender and Mills, but now Grant Fisher, and he's
yeah,
one you watch from high school through into college, and it's just so tough. It's such a meat grinder. It seems like for these college kids, for some of them to come through that and still have the desire, the ability, the fire in the belly. I don't know what it's the talent still developing to become world
sure.
class. And
So a segue on Grant Fisher, a good buddy of mine. He's a 219 guy. He's a Navy Academy guy. He used to live here in Germantown. He just retired from FedEx. He's a pilot, and he moved to Texas. And he moves into this house, and he's coaching as in retirement, he's coaching the triathlon team at University of Texas, which is trying to get in the NCAAs. It's a club sport because he's really good. He ended up going to the Ironman triathlon. He's a 219, like I say, ran 219 at Grandma's, I think, several years ago. He's been to, I think he qualified for 2 or 3 trials. But anyway, he was a solid 220 guy. But anyway, he moves into this little house or out in the middle of suburbs, and his next door neighbor is Grant Fisher's parents.
Oh my gosh.
So Grant Fisher's, traveling down, and he meets this guy, and my friend's 60, I'm 60, he's 61 or 62. He's still in great shape, but so he's down there running and stuff, and he's coaching, and so he's became really good friends with his parents. Anyway, his parents took him on the friends and family tour to Eugene. They got to sit in the Bowerman thing with them and hang out with the Fishers. So I kind of cheering for him by proximity osmosis or whatever.
There you
I mean,
go.
kind of exciting that somebody knows that somebody you can pull for, right?
That's a great those are the fun things, networking. My relationship with Dick Beardsley has got me to meet, to get to
Sure,
interview Ron Tabb and Greg Meyer and all the people I used to read about, dream about. You never thought you'd ever talk to the dude, let alone get to be an acquaintance or whatever. And so
sure,
that is such a great story. But Grant Fisher, what a talent. The race almost seems like a blur to me right now in that, the closing speed that you have to have these days,
sure. Yeah,
to be in.
you
I
gotta
know he
be.
ran
Yeah,
a 55 and change
yeah,
last 400. And that was always kind of our downfall as Americans. Yeah, well, you can run a 60, 61, 62. I mean, that's staying fast in my book. But when everybody else is running 54s, you're getting your doors blown
yeah.
off. And
Right. Yeah. The yifter, the shifter,
oh,
kind of, those kind of guys. The speed at the end and that's what it takes.
yeah,
So interestingly, with the 10 too, the women, I mean, our women just showed up pretty well. They did quite well. I thought Volby is young. I didn't really think she would be as good as she ended up being this year. And I'm very pleased with her and Schweitzer from Missouri. So I kind of followed her. We're kind of close to Missouri there. So we saw the, SEC runners. So
oh yeah,
kind of
I
exciting.
agree 100%. 10,000 meters aren't you can not always be the most exciting races to watch. You can go make a sandwich and come back, you haven't missed a thing,
Sure.
sort of thing. But I started watching that thing about halfway through, and the commentator go, "Oh, all 3 American gals are still in this lead group." And I don't, again, I'm going to say something. You take out the Kenyans and the Ethiopians, we finished 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Now, I take them out because they're unique talents. It's a compliment to them that I kind of sometimes look at race results, Brad, and don't, like Boulder. And I go down through the list to find the first non-African because I want to go, oh,
Yeah.
hey, dude, nice job. 9th place, top 10 at Boulder. I mean, because these Kenyans and Ethiopians, I'm taking nothing away from them, talent and hard work. But they just
Well,
kind
and
of
they
seem to
also
be in their own
they live in
race
a
sometimes. But we're
they
right.
live in a perfect environment. The Rift Valley at altitude, growing up at altitude, mode of transportation is usually by foot. You get you know, and diet's better in some ways.
Their
So
motivation, not to
anyway,
say we're not motivated, but I've heard for some of them, this is like I hate to, their village. If they become successful, everybody's
sure.
going to, benefit.
Well,
Family,
it's their national sport. Sure, they're the quarterback of the NFL for if you're a good distance runner there, you're the NFL star
but then I've
quarterback.
seen some footage of some training camps. I'm not making this up. There's like hundreds of young
Yeah,
kids out running and, from like 15, 16, and the cream is rising to the top. It seems like every year there's
yeah,
a new one. We're going to run out of time. Marathon,
sure.
today's event.
Yep,
All I know is the Americans ran well.
sure.
8th and 9th place overall. I hope I'm not giving.
Absolutely.
Well, this will come out Sunday. Everybody should know the results by now.
Yeah,
We're recording this on Saturday, and I just read a statistic. It said Mentz was 56th best time going into the event, into the Olympics, and Young was 61
hmm
on the list, and they finished 8th and 9th. So I think they,
sure.
obviously rose to the occasion. Ed
Absolutely.
Eyestone thought 208 could medal, and they both ran
Yeah.
208.
hmm
And I guess I was reading this on Let's Run. It just basically said everybody else, they came with those guys that finished ahead of our guys, brought their A game and rose to the
Sure.
occasion because it was a damn hard course. There was I forget, I think there was like a 14% pitch on this hill, which is like 2/3 of the way through the race, which, you've run Boston. I thought, I've had people tell me Heartbreak Hill, you won't even notice it. Are you kidding me? I know why they call it Heartbreak Hill. I about died on the darn thing. And that's the last place you need a hill, is at that point where you're kind of running into that mental fatigue and physical fatigue and all that. But great races.
They did really well. They should hold their head high. That's an outstanding event.
Outstanding. We always kind of want winners. We want medalists and all that, but top 10 in the Olympic marathon on that day and that course. But Kelly, I don't know how do you even classify him. It's the Hall of Famer from Ethiopia. Ran 2:12. And then his name escapes me, the world record holder. He ended up dropping out DNF, which is he's getting long in the tooth. I mean, how many years can you keep that level of performance going? But we're at about 45 minutes. We didn't even get a chance to talk about our shot putters, first and second, the pole vault. Kendricks, silver medalist.
Our women's
getting beat by
discus thrower.
Duplantis jumps 20 feet 6 inches. I can't do the metric thing. I go to my phone right away and I put in the meter so I can get feet and inches. And Kendricks does 19.6 1/4, 6.5. He gets beat by a foot, but when you're getting beat by the guy who's got the top 10 all-time jumps in the world, second's like a gold.
There's a perspective when they show how when he goes over where he leaves the bar and how much he has to go over that bar from where he leaves his pole. It's ridiculous. I don't know how
it's unique. Valerie Allman winning the discus. Somebody that kind of got overlooked. Jasmine Moore, bronze in both the long and triple jump.
Oh yeah,
talk about a double threat.
That's great.
This stuff, like I was saying, if it'd be interesting to go back and score the meet, U.S. against the world, and see, and I don't know how you score track meets. Top 10, top 8 gets points. I don't know how you do dual meets.
Different ways. 6 to 8.
But I think we'll see. Before I hang up on you here, Bryce Hoppel, I see him. I see him medaling.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Which one? He's in the mix. There's like 3 guys that are in the 41 shape, and that race is going to be one for the ages. The 5,000, they've had the 2 guys from the 10K dropped out. I guess the world record holder Chip to go. For some reason, after the 10K, they just said, nah. I guess if you win the gold medal and you're the world record holder and you've kind of iced your career here, it's like, do I need to come back and do it again? And who knows? But it opens up the door for Grant Fisher again.
I think he can. I think 10 is his best event, but he's also very, very good at the 5. So he's probably our hope right there.
That's amazing. Well, Brad, we rushed through this because we try to keep these down to about 45 minutes, and I can't thank you enough for filling in for the Beards. And there's not too many people fill in for the Beards.
Nobody can fill in for the Beard. I have a beard, but I can't fill in for the Beards. So
well, hopefully he's doing well today, and we'll hopefully hear from him next week. And Brad, thanks so much. I'm going to let you go, and we're going to get back to see what happens here. And I'm sure Dick and I will do a little wrap up after the women's marathon tomorrow. That's kind of cool. They're closing the Olympics with the women's marathon.
Absolutely. We got the girl ran at Northern State is running.
That is such a great story. 2-time Grandma's winner.
Yeah.
We're hoping to get her on the podcast. Dick says he knows her pretty well because she sounds like, we kind of stayed away from her, and just because I think that's the last thing you need to do is call people up and ask them for stuff that's really just a distraction, and maybe it would have been all right.
Well, after she's done, I think it'd be perfect because then she can tell you about it and her experiences, and that'd be great. That'd be a great guest.
Well, thank you, Brad. I appreciate you, man, and you've always been a great supporter and a good friend, and so I look forward to seeing you. We'll get together. I think I'm trying to think if there's some cross-country meets at South Dakota State University coming up this fall. We should try to rendezvous, have a little alumni get-together. Sure.
And Massman's, all classes are invited to Massman's Farm on the 16th of August or 17th of August on that Saturday. And there's free, and I have free T-shirts. I've made 70 T-shirts with Massman on there and a whole bunch of South Dakota State stuff. So,
that's so cool.
It'd be awesome.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, let's close this up. Thanks, guys, for listening. If you have any questions for any of us, don't hesitate to leave us a comment on our website. You can get to us on Facebook, Instagram, X at Beards and Dunn Pod. If you're watching on YouTube, we'd love to have you subscribe and leave us a comment. Brad, have a wonderful day and enjoy the Olympics.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Out here.